Summary of Into the Wild. Into the Wild is about a young man named Christopher Johnson McCandless, who in 1990 dropped off the grid completely and purposely lost contact with his family. He hitchhiked across the more eastern areas of North America. He also went down to Mexico. So he gave all of his money from his personal savings bank accounts to charity, eventually abandoned his car with most of his possessions in it, burned all the cash that was left in his wallet, and invented a different lifestyle for himself, or a new life for himself. So, tragically, he met his end in Alaska in 1992. This is what he looked like by kind of the end of it when he got to Alaska. And this is a map of where he basically traveled to. Five facts about Into the Wild, or Christopher McCandless. These are kind of long, sorry, there was a lot of stuff. Chris worked at a grain elevator in Carthage, South Dakota, owned by Wayne Westenberg, who became a good friend of his. I don't really remember how they met and what it said in the book how they met, but they were pretty close. He was also kind of close with the other people who worked there. Christopher McCandless changed his name to Alexander Supertramp. It's not really kind of known why, but the idea is that because he was going to be starting a new life for himself, he didn't want to bring his actual self with him. So changing his name was a way of kind of letting go of himself for a while. Chris met a lot of people on his journey, and everyone he met, even if it was just for a day or for a very short time, he left a lasting impression on them. At least that's what they say. Especially people that he just met for a day. Like, an example would be Wayne's mother, who kind of didn't really like it when her son would bring his employees over for dinner, but she was talking with Chris, or Alex, for a while, and she wanted to talk to him again. The fourth one is Chris and his father were not on good terms, especially after Chris graduated from college. The reason to this was because when he went to to someplace in California, where he grew up for his first 6 years of his life, he found out that his father was still with his first wife from his previous marriage, married by divided time between his families until his other life was found out. They then moved to the East Coast. Chris found this out during his first cross-country wanderings 2 summers before going to college. The last one is about how he died. So you need to know is that Chris was eating wild plants in Alaska. He had a plant book on wild plants that could be eaten. He was eating a lot of wild potatoes that were kind of growing out in the woods. There's this plant called wild sweet pea that is closely related to wild potatoes and looks a lot like it. It's apparently highly poisonous. He was eating the roots of the potatoes, of a wild potato, and then eventually started eating the seeds of it. But apparently in the book it says that only the roots are edible and that you should stay away from the seeds. And I didn't actually say stay away from the seeds. It just says that the roots are edible, so scientifically you would think that you should not eat the seeds then. The seeds are actually said to be toxic, so. It is a part of the pea family, or legumes, plants that wild potatoes are part of. Is filled with species that can produce alkaloids, a chemical compound or compounds that have powerful effects on humans and animals. In alkaloid-producing plants, the toxin is strictly localized within the plant or the seeds. What happens with these types of plants is that the plant's concentrate of alkaloids in the seeds coats in late summer to keep animals from eating their seeds. Depending on the time of year, it is not uncommon for plants with edible roots to have poisonous seeds. If a species does produce alkaloids as fall approaches, then the seeds are where the toxin is likely to be found, but this is not what killed him. What did, it was still kind of wild potato, but it was mainly the seed. What did was Swainsonine is a mycotoxin in mold. Is found in forage and is a fungus named Swainsonine. I can't say. There's the scientific name. I don't remember what that is. That grows on many species of legumes during the summer months in soggy climates. That produces a potent alkaloid. It is Swainsonine is dubbed by ranchers and veterinarians as a killer of livestock. There have been cases of animals stricken by Swainsonine poisoning after eating damp forage contaminated with the actual fungus of it, the Swainsonine. That's the medical term, and then there's the scientific one, and I can't say it for the life of me. Chris was probably killed by the mold that had been growing on the dried wild potato seeds that he had been eating during the last 2 weeks of July, were probably contaminated with it. It kind of makes sense because he was keeping them in Ziploc bags that were kind of damp at the time, and this is kind of after a lot of rain had been going on. Chris had been gathering and eating a large quantity of wild potato seeds on July 14th after or during a extended period of rainy weather in between his meals. Chris stored these seeds in damp, unclean Ziploc bags, a great place for a mold to grow. This means that the plant wasn't toxic per se, the seeds wasn't. He had the very misfortune to eat moldy seeds that were kind of contaminated. Innocent mistake. The symptoms of Swainsonine poisoning are mainly neurological. From what has been seen in animals, and if it's seen in animals, it could probably affect humans, is that after eating Swainsonine-infected seeds or foods, they show signs of depression, a slow staggering gait, as dull eyes with staring look, muscular incoordination, difficulty eating, drinking. Swainsonine poisoning is chronic. The alkaloid does not kill outright. The toxin does the deed insidiously and indirectly by inhabiting enzymes that is essential to give glycoprotein metabolism. It makes a vapor lock in the mammalian fuel lines. The body is prevented from turning what it eats into energy, so Chris basically starved to death, and this is just the cause. And if you ingest too much Swainsonine, you are bound to starve, no matter how much you eat. It has been shown in the animals that if they stop eating the contaminated needs food with Swainsonine in it, they can recover from it, the poisoning, after they stop eating but only if they are in a robust condition to begin with, which Chris kind of wasn't. He was pretty lean because of his diet, what he was eating. So basically that's kind of what happened, and it comes out through the urine. The flush, it has to bind with the available molecules of glucose or amino acids, and a large store of sugar and protein have to be present in the body to mop up the poison, get it out of the body. And like I said, he was semi-starving, his body wasn't getting the right nutrition, apparently. There was no way to flush it out correctly, and he was getting really weak by that point after eating so much of the contaminated seeds. His body just started to get really weak. He couldn't really hunt efficiently anymore. He did try though, but he had eaten so much of those contaminated seeds with Swainsonine that no matter how much food he ate, there was no way he was going to survive. And he tried to forage, still get food, so he could survive till he starved to death. So there was nothing he could do to help himself by that time. Now, why I liked or did not like the book, there are some things I did like and don't like. But I like this book because I knew a bit about Chris, the catalyst, the story, what he did. I found his story intriguing, and I didn't really know a lot about it. I remember sometimes watching bits of the movie with my dad. I would wake up to him watching it, and then I just wonder, okay, what the heck is this? Go back to sleep. I wanted to learn more about him, and from what I got from the book is that Chris was a pretty interesting person. He had some really great ideas and has some great lessons that he can teach you about life and about society. That's what I kind of like about the book. He had his mind set on something, he would do it. He really wanted to go to Alaska. And it says in the book, actually, that he liked Jack London a lot. And I really liked Jack London, and he was up in the Yukon area of Alaska, but he wasn't there long. What I kind of did not like was reading about his family, how his death and how his disappearance affected them, only because it made me really sad. But it was an important part of the story, because you need to know, how did this affect his family? I also kind of didn't like hearing about how the people in Alaska were reacting to this, just thinking, oh, it's another one of those crazy kooks who read Jack London books and want to come up here. I kind of didn't like that, and I didn't really kind of like how sometimes in the book it switched off to these stories about these other guys who kind of did what Chris did, either not in Alaska but in different areas, and actually ended up dying too. And Chris's story was more interesting to me. Who would I recommend this book to, and why? Would I recommend it to them? I would recommend it to people who have seen the movie but have not read the book, so they can kind of compare and see if anything has changed, because I haven't seen the movie yet. So they can just kind of compare it to each other, see if anything has changed. I would also recommend it to people who know or heard a little bit about Chris, and they want to learn more, because this kind of gives you the full detail along with all the people that he met that you might not get from a Wikipedia page or someone's blog or from an EDU website. I would also recommend it to people who plan on hitchhiking across North America or going up to Alaska and doing what Chris kind of did. It's just as a warning, so you know that, okay, you need to be prepared watch out for a lot of things. Just basically be prepared. Watch out for the plants. Take time before you do this. Take time to study the plants thoroughly and know that if you can eat the seeds of this plant, if you can eat the roots of this plant, if you can do this with that plant, eat the roots, eat it if it's not poisonous, if it is poisonous, because this is kind of what did kill him. And also, keep the food safe and not in damp, unclean Ziploc bags. You do not want to die from eating contaminated food. And that's why I really did enjoy this book. It is a really good book. So, thank you, and I'm sorry if this was longer than I meant for it to be. It really is. Just, look down in the description for some things, especially some words you might not have recognized.